Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about the reference language around the COVID-19 event and the opportunity that exists for resurgent candidates in an effective reference language tag for the COVID-19 event. All right, so let's talk about it. All right, so first, I wanted to just talk about coronavirus and COVID-19 and the overall changes. So this is the change that this is putting into America is the magnitude of it is absolutely massive. Wait, I don't know if I introduced myself. Of course, I am Scott Garibay. If I didn't know, if I didn't answer open that way, these are truly unusual times, and I think it's been stressful for everyone. So I really want to just talk about where we are right now in this point in time in history, and then talk about the language of it. So, understanding COVID, the COVID-19 event, and then I'll give you my new reference term. I think the only way to understand it is through a 9/11. So 9/11 is an absolutely massively famous event within the last 50 years. I thought there would never ever be an event that 9/11 would take a backseat to. And I think the COVID-19 event, that's absolutely what's happening right now. So the reason why I think COVID-19 event is much, much larger in scale and in magnitude and in importance to Americans is just what's happening. So 2,600 Americans died in 9/11. Horrible, horrible event. Just absolutely tragic. And it reshaped the way we live in America. It reshaped security. It reshaped identity. It reshaped the importance of IDs. I don't go anywhere without my ID anymore. And I pay hyper close attention to making sure my ID is up to date and I got all my papers. Like after 9/11, you have to have that stuff in order. You cannot roll around without ID. It's just, and it completely reshaped, our everything in America. Like, we live in Pennsylvania, and there's this amazing convenience store called a Wawa. They build these super Wawas out here, and they're surrounded by concrete pillars where you cannot ram that building. And, I just realized one day that my kids had no idea where those things came from. They sprouted up like popular trees as soon as 9/11 was done, okay? But COVID-19 is on a scale that really makes 9/11, it's going to be a footnote in history to COVID-19, in my opinion. It's absolutely horrible what happened. My heart goes out to all the people who suffered, who lost family members in that situation. But the life exit count from 9/11 was 2,600 people, 2,600 Americans. The life exit count from coronavirus right now for Americans is 2,200. It's almost a certainty that the life exit count will go higher on COVID-19 event than it did on 9/11. In addition to that, 9/11, it did change a lot of things for Americans, but it did not change things the way that we're dealing now. I mean, you can't go to the movies. The streets of New York are empty. There are millions of kids at home from school, millions of people out of work or working from home, millions of people, hundreds of thousands at minimum sheltering in place. The scale of this is absolutely massive, and the reality is 9/11 has been surpassed as an event of political historical importance by COVID-19 event. I don't think there's any argument. Like, this is just the scale of this, and how it affects American lives is just far more broad. So with that, okay, what is the COVID-19 event? Well, it certainly isn't the COVID-19 event, right? That's a terrible way to refer to it, right? And here's the thing: language is massively important. If you follow politics, you will understand that language is just so critically important. It is massively important. So, with that said, you then need a way to refer to this event, right? COVID-19 is terrible. One, why is COVID-19 a terrible reference point? One, Corona-19 never really caught on. Is it the coronavirus or is it COVID-19? Ask 3 people, you'll get 2 answers. That's not good, right? The other thing is, and this is a huge problem, we've really got to start to deal with this problem. Americans are really getting to the point where they are sick to death of experts and really frustrated with experts. And I kind of get it. COVID-19 is one of the reasons, right? Coronavirus, very catchy name, easy to remember. And by the way, coronavirus had a different name that had another word in front of it before coronavirus. So it really has three names. Most polite people have dropped off that prefix name, right? And then you have coronavirus. You have prefix coronavirus, then you have coronavirus, and then you have COVID-19. And you can tag event to the end of that, right? Now, here's the thing. None of those names are good, okay? Because one, coronavirus and COVID-19 fought for space, right? And here's the thing. The CDC, filled with experts who know all kinds about this stuff, right? And they come out with this name that is technically correct, but it's so forgettable. There was already a COVID-2, right? And so it's just, it's a very bad name. It's not catchy. It doesn't help people remember it. It's not distinctive. And that's one of the things that people are, like, I listen to Slate Political Gabfest. The best political commentary on the planet. I absolutely love those guys. It's David Plotz, John Dickerson, Emily Bazelon, absolutely brilliant people. And they had on an expert the other day, and I don't remember his name. And the reason why was, it was when you listen to him on their Political Gabfest, you could understand why Americans are so incredibly frustrated with experts. They have all this knowledge, and all they use that knowledge to do most of the time is not give answers, not summarize their point, be incredibly cautious to the point where people get bored and stop listening to them. And COVID-19 is just, it's a symptom of that, right? Experts get a ton of knowledge and then do so little with it because they're afraid of being wrong that often they take no action. And Americans just, they don't have time for that. They would rather listen to somebody who is wrong and takes action than someone who has lots and lots of knowledge and takes no action. And that's where we are with a lot of experts. And experts really desperately need to solve this. They need to start realizing you can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you don't apply it, and you don't apply it quickly, and you don't make your knowledge turn into real solutions for people real darn fast, then you're really going to remain incredibly irrelevant. And we are heading toward that. We are virtually there already, where expertise is not respected by Americans at the macro level. That is a very bad problem, and we really need to fix it. So here's the thing. COVID-19 event, terrible name. Coronavirus event, terrible name, right? Pandemic, terrible name, not specific enough, right? So how do we refer to what's happening right now? Well, we already have an extremely good data point. We have an extremely good reference language, okay? 9/11, it is worldwide known. When I say it, you know everything I mean, okay? Well, that's what we need to do exactly with this COVID-19 event. And we should call it 3/16. That is March 16th, right? And the reason why I choose that's not the day that the CDC declared declared it a pandemic or any other nonsense like that. March 16th, 3/16 is a great name for what we're dealing with right now. Okay? So one, the reality is the disease is not the focus. It's the change that it caused to our lives, right? The life exit number is relatively low, but the impact to our lives is absolutely massive, right? So when we name this 3/16, referring to March 16th, okay, it makes sense. And the reason why it makes sense is March 16th was the day. Here's how this went down, okay? So I remember I was going about my business on the Thursday before that, right? And on the Thursday in March. And that Thursday specifically was March 12th, okay? And I remember just a flare of emails and texts and all these kind of things happening with people I knew, and people were like, as soon as this day is done and I have a bit of freedom, I'm going to buy a bunch of food. And people just, that's what they did. They went home, and I was one of them. I went right out and I bought a whole bunch of canned goods to be prepped, right? But I didn't tell anybody then, right? Because the next day, all I heard on Friday was a bunch of people saying, "Oh, all these wackadoos bought a whole bunch of food," right? And then on Saturday, there was even more discussion, and on Sunday, people were in a tizzy over what was happening, and then on Monday, that's when literally low millions of kids were home from school, low millions of people were working from home, or they were starting to understand that soon they may not have work at all, which is terrible, right? And then just event after event after event fell like dominoes. And March 16th was the day when there was no more discussion about the unwiseness of buying lots of canned goods. That died overnight, right? And March 16th, when moms and dads and parents all over were sitting with their kids in their home for the first time, it dawned on everybody, oh my gosh, life may never be the same. And that was 316. And 316 is the right date. And 316 is the right reference language. Okay? And it's powerful and it makes sense. Okay? Corona is not helpful. It crashed into some brands. Virus, not helpful. People still talk about things going viral, right? So viral had a good connotation for a long time. Coronavirus, COVID-19, absolutely terrible reference language tags. 316 just says, hey, let's all acknowledge the time where life changed again. And it puts it in perspective. 9/11, 316. Okay? This is a great reference language term. It really needs to happen. We need to sweep this, because what are you going to do when COVID-21 comes, right? Like, is that going to be the COVID-21 event? And people are going to like, oh, well, the COVID-21 event was pretty important, but remember what happened with the COVID? It's stupid. It doesn't work, right? 316 makes sense. It makes sense. I think it's a really good, solid reference language. And language is massively important. We need a way to talk about this, right? And I don't want to be saying coronavirus for the rest of my life. 316 is quick, right? Now, I will admit, I am a evangelical Christian, right? And I was shocked when I looked up what the date was, that, March 16th, Monday, March 16th, was 316. Because, of course, there's the famous verse, John 3:16, right? But actually, I think that really works. It's a little bit apocalyptic. And that's exactly what COVID-19 event was. It was a little bit apocalyptic, right? It was terrifying and frightening and uncomfortable, right? But at the same time, crime didn't whip through America, right? It was pretty controlled, right? And there was a lot of comfort in what seemed like an end time event, right? So it was just a little apocalyptic. And that's what 316 is. It's just a little apocalyptic. Not really apocalyptic, but just a little, right? Just a spice, right? So I think it's a really solid tag. I think this would be a quick way to refer to the COVID-19 event, the coronavirus event, the pandemic event, right? Whatever you want, And actually, it's not going to be whatever. We need one way to refer to this, and I'm starting now, right? This event should be called 316 event. Now, it doesn't mean anything if a small, a guy with a small YouTube channel says that we should refer to this as 316. But it would mean something if some resurgent candidates used that term collectively and then began going forward. So one, I think, is a huge opportunity for the resurgents. Okay, so right now, in the 2020 U.S. presidential primary race, we have two groups. We have the retreads and we have the resurgents. Who are the retreads? Joe Biden is the retread, and Bernie Sanders is a retread. Bernie Sanders failed to be president in 2016, and guess what? We're treading that same area, right? Everybody realized he was an unelectable socialist in 2016, and he didn't win. And in 2020, everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, yeah!" Like Bernie Sanders is super great at getting super liberal Democrats, but has absolutely no hope of being elected because he's an unelectable socialist, right? So it's a retread, right? Biden, we had him as vice president in 2008. We had him again for vice president in 2012. And in 2016, everybody said, hey, Joe, take the ball. Here you go, buddy. Run with it. You can be president. He's like, nah, I don't want to be president. I'm going to go over here and just sit out the next 4 years, and you guys can all enjoy Donald Trump. And then when he saw the absolute catastrophe he let happen with this because he dropped the incumbency ball. Incumbency is massively powerful in politics, and he just took incumbency and booted it into a lake, right? And now in 2020, he comes back and he says, hey, I'm 4 years older than I was before, and I could give you your first 80-year-old president. And because I'm not running for one term, I could be your first 86-year-old president, right? He's a retread, and he's promising just 8 more years of Obama, literally, right? And the only problem with that is he'd be 80 to 86 years old during this. And frankly, if you were watching the news on March 25th, he gave a very noble effort, but I just read an entire article about the absolutely massive number of gaffes he getting through a single day of cable news coverage, right? He struggles to get through a single conversation at this point. He can't make it through an interview without his statements being news, right? There's absolutely no way Joe Biden is going to function as a candidate for 2020 Democrat if there's any hope of winning for the 2020. So that gets us back to the resurgence. So we can take all those suspenders, people who suspended their campaigns, and let them rerun as resurgent candidates. Okay, this has never happened before, but boy oh boy are we in a situation for firsts, right? So all the resurgents, Amy Klobuchar, Elizabeth Warren, Beto O'Rourke, Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, and the best of them all, Andrew Yang, can resurge, and the way they can show America that they understand what's happening is referring to what's happening right now in a way that's winsome, in a way that makes sense, in a way that actually fits, in a way that's useful, and in a way that's precedented. 3:16. That is the right reference language for what we're dealing with right now, right? It takes the focus off the disease and puts the focus on the day our lives changed again. And in my opinion, it also honors 9/11 victims by saying, hey, we that day lives in infamy, right? And we are going to never forget it. And 3/16 should be a day that should never be forgotten, right? And I think this is a way for the resurgents to separate themselves from the retreads. We desperately need a new candidate. And I am very excited, and the reason why is we can absolutely get a new candidate. All we need to do is collectively, as the American people, ask Biden and Bernie to step down and suspend their campaigns, making their delegate counts useless, refuse to arrive even at the convention, right, and say we're suspending our campaigns, we're no longer running, and we encourage you to re-engage with these resurgent candidates. And that is a completely legitimate request from the American people, and the reason why is Bernie and Biden are the most susceptible people to the 316 to the 316 product, right? That's very, very clear, right? So this is a great reference language to a way the resurgents can split themselves off from the retreads, and we as American people really need to start calling for Biden and Bernie to step down and say this was a fun experiment before the earth had a plague whip across it, but now this is not so funny and this isn't fun. We need a real candidate who's actually going to be able to do the job, right? And I think this is the best path forward. All that is 100% my opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.